Wikipedia.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the desk here ahead of game number 3. It's me, Infinite Dodge, but this time, that's not a masked swan. That's a Tom Temporal Nash sitting there in the middle position. Middlecott has returned, graciously ruining his voice with 4 games of play-by-play today. What a Chad.
Ruining your ears as well.
Oh,
I love it.
nothing,
I love it.
Nothing of the sort.
I don't think it's ruining it.
No, not at all. But what might be ruined is Sengaku's cemented position near the top of the table with this Game 3 coming up. It will be Sengaku Gaming versus AXZ here in our 3rd match on the day, and Sengaku's had a rough go of it recently, boys. And granted, they've been playing the other top of the table teams, but DFM and Hawks maybe putting the fear of God in them a little bit. They should be fine against AXZ here, right?
Yeah, I mean, they have had that really tough schedule, obviously playing up against DFM, the Hawks, and V3 in their last 3 games. So 3 real titans of the league. We've got Worlds representatives in there. We've got super strong performers. But yeah, I think for Sengaku, they have looked a little bit shaky, but strength of schedule is a thing that you're inevitably going to have to deal with. You don't want to be losing or looking bad against AXZ, though, because this is a team that is in that 7th place position and don't look very likely to actually move on much further beyond that. So I think, yeah, return to form here is the name of the game for Sengaku.
If we take this as a series whole, Sengaku now have an even scoreline against Hawks and DFM, so I'm not worried yet. That can still be a winning record in the 3rd round robin over the season. But you're right, when you go through absolutely flawless for quite a while, some losses do stick out. They really do draw the eye. We look to Sengaku to just calmly and coolly continue their earlier performance from spring.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a chance for them to get back on track, right? The tough part is over. AXZ theoretically shouldn't be a big issue, and this is where the mental makeup of the team really shines through. Are you the kind of team that is going to be offset or off-put by some adversity here? Are you going to step up, get back to business, and look at what you can from those losses to improve and get back to doing what you do? But looking at it a little bit more from the AXZ perspective here, we actually have had some mixed opinions. I personally feel like AXZ is, oddly enough, as the 7th place team, overperforming based on what they've shown us in terms of skill and individual makeup. I know somebody like RMC will say that, no, they're actually a little bit better than we give them credit for. How are we feeling about AXZ here? Locked in at 7th, but could tie Burning Core at 6th with a win here against Sengaku.
If you're losing to Burning Core and your entire idea is to play through bot lane and just make Sanctuary the hyper carry, things aren't going very well for you right now. AXZ look to be cementing themselves in 7th. They need to escape that to 6th and maybe playoffs for this to be a success. That is their bar to meet.
Yeah, I mean, Sanctu was our premier Zeri when Zeri first came out. He was the first one we got the big clip on. I believe it was Mr. Middlecott himself who, hyping up the Sanctu Zeri. So he can do the carrying. I think something that was a big positive for me was on Friday. I do believe AXZ took home a W, or maybe it was on Wednesday. But one of the more recent Ws, Yoshi looked competent on Gnar, which is not the kind of champion we normally assign to Yoshi. Normally it's tanks or nothing, and more
not
so Poppy or nothing.
Yeah, that'll do.
Yeah, I think, well, Yellow Yoshi has played a fair few games now, but yeah, definitely becoming more comfortable on the pick. Funnily enough, the Gnar is actually 100% loss rate on 12.13 in the LJL. It does tend to be our lower teams that are picking that towards the top side. I believe that has actually flipped with the results coming through from today. Would they be able to?
Yeah, it's still a very low win rate because Ebby's the only one who can do it.
It's not good. But it turns out that when good people play the champion, they win. When bad people play the champion, they lose.
It's so bizarre. Like Gnar, the LJL top lane, Gnar enter, now just Gnar. It's so strong and it's so powerful across the world, and suddenly the LJL just can't play it. What is happening?
Oh Lord.
Well, you know what? It's better than them trying to play the Renekton, which nobody can play right now. Although Temporal and I both know the exact same thing. Renekton is actually better than he's been in a long time. The buff he got with the 80 ratio on his ultimate is actually really impactful. I've played against some very scary Renektons recently, but that's a point for another time. We have an AXZ team here that I think we all sort of agree, playing for bot lane. Hopefully they can continue to evolve their style, maybe incorporate Yashu as more of a backup plan outside of these tanks, the Nars, maybe finding some good looks for him. But overall, I think when it comes down to it, Sengoku should be the heavy favorites moving into today. So something I like to look at when you do have a team that's so heavily favored is what can they do in this game to learn and push themselves against a weaker opponent? What do you guys want to see Sengoku evolve on now that we've actually seen them take some losses recently?
Make it fast, make it clean.
Yes, I think that's the main thing. That's something that I talked about a little bit earlier. You've just got to up the tempo because that's what DFM, that's what Hawks are starting to do to an extent as well. And if you can't keep pace with the bottom teams in the early game, then you are just going to get blown out of the water when it comes to playing up against the likes of DFM again and when you get into these best of 5 series. So I think Sengoku, they've looked good, but they need to look good a little bit sooner.
Temporal, you seem to be pretty much in agreement. Anything more specific in draft? Anything you want to see them incorporate to and accelerate that end goal of being a little bit faster, a little bit cleaner?
Something you guys brought up to me in the break is that there was a loss of an Alistair
Yes.
against the SoftBank Hawks. And while I don't have the draft in front of me, what on earth would possess you to pick Alistair in the year of our LJL 2022? I've seen Alistair once or twice across the world as like a counter. Why would you do this? The champion is from 2000 and God knows. It's awful. He has 2 abilities that are 1 ability. His ultimate doesn't matter in the current year because we're killing all the tanks anyway. Stop it. Pick something standard. Just standard. Normal.
I think what's happening here, Temporal, we mentioned this on game number 1 of the day where Alistar
I'm seeing red dodge. I'm seeing red. It's to support Sengoku, but right now it's just got me mad at that draft.
Well, very appropriately, right? Like a bull attracted to a waving flag. You have charged to you've charged to skewer Sengoku's drafting.
Oh, lordy lord. Tom. Oh, Tom.
But the reasoning I think that's coming through from these teams is something that we see pro players do a lot that kind of makes me question how seriously they take their jobs, which is Alistar got buffed on 12-14. So I think you're seeing it more in solo queue, and you might it feels a little bit stronger when you play it in solo queue, and then you go, we should play Alistar. Buddy, you're playing on 12-13. There's no buffs.
It's not the patch. It's not the patch. Like,
it's a reasonable assessment. Alistair in solo queue has a lot of agency. Anything Hex Flash in solo queue is great. Then Alistair can really like divide an unorganized team. Relying on that in competitive is almost slander to your opponents. So don't rely on it.
Yeah, definitely so. We will see if they avoid the Alistar this time around because we are ready to move on over to draft. Gentlemen, take it away. I'll see you after game 3.
Let's go. Okay.
Let's go. Thank you,
Into
Josh.
draft. Yeah, it's very nice. It's
That was all right.
really lovely person.
There's an Italy ban on my screen, Middle Cut. Take it away.
What? Get rid of the Nidalee ban?
I just... what on earth? I said standard. We've banned 2 single pick junglers. There will be a Jinx in this game or a single hyper carry from Sengoku. It looks like they don't even want the Jinx because they banned away an Aphelios who would have worked it.
Yeah, and AXZ have also pinched a little bit of that AD carry pool, the Kalista and the Zeri, once again being focused in this draft. The Sivir actually taken off the table as well. So I'm looking at Jinx in terms of top tier AD carries. Really, Temporal, it doesn't really feel like there's much else.
No, that's 4 pretty active bans on the patch. I'm a bit worried for AXZ. There's a bot lane focused team have banned their own signatures area and the 2 most exciting and upfront AD carries on the patch. Maybe they want to stretch this one out, Middle Cut. But otherwise, it's a bit of an odd way to start.
Yeah, and we've seen some odd drafting so far on in the day. I don't know if you were awake for the Burning Core matchup, but...
No, I was resting heavily after a busy day yesterday. Educate me.
Yeah. I feel like... I don't want to say what happened. I feel
you
like
want to spoil the fun?
You should just go and have a look and then formulate your own opinions. I don't want to bias you in any way, but Sengoku have picked up the Wukong as that first pick, and then that Jinx, like we just talked about, sort of one of the few AD carries that is really in those upper tiers left on the table. AXZ going towards it.
How on earth have AXZ got over the first rotation? Looks like it fits with Sengoku's first 3 bans. I don't know. I hope Sengoku didn't run out of answers and was hopefully planning for this. Morgana is a really interesting pick. We saw this discussed on the LEC. Brox's debut as the hover completely kills me. It's a poppy lock in, no one's surprised.
Yeah, and obviously for AXZ, one of the few teams that can actually flex this as a pick. Very, very strong in the jungle, but Yellow Yoshi also, this Poppy 1-trick coming out of solo queue, then into competitive, has looked actually pretty good on the champion. Ezreal is a weird one, though. Combined with the Karma, this was a lane that used to be very, very strong, but no one really plays it now anymore.
And after 20 minutes, Jinx plus anything will run it straight over. The Yuumi not even required, as AXZ just decide they want to engage as their main unit just looks so much stronger than Sengoku's right now. In second bans, all AXZ have to do is suppress the mid lane, make Jet's job as difficult as possible, and all Sengoku will have left is the hands check.
Yeah, Tempo. Just suppress Jet. Just make it hard for Jet to play the game. I'm not sure if that's actually possible with only 2 bans. You probably need about 20.
Hard. It's hard. I think the R5 will help as well. Mega Man, fingers crossed, should be able to field that matchup. It's hard to pick big outstanding carries on blue 4 and 5 unless you are confident in the jungler that sits alongside it, and the 2v2 is just so strong on the patch. Wukong might be able to offer that, but normally we've seen it going towards a lane right now.
Well, I mean, once in Jet, I think as a jungle 2v2, I wouldn't be surprised if they do go for something a bit more aggressive, because I would be surprised if this is a duo that lacks confidence, because Jet is the best player in the LJL right now. I don't think there is anyone that would dispute that. And Once has also been looking like one of these top tier junglers, sort of coming in this year and really sort of rising to sort of previous form, which has been really, really enjoyable to see.
It's really entertaining. They are
a little bit more split.
Yeah, they are the sort of attacking 2v2. Maybe we'll see a late Lee Sin here, just to, you know, flex a bit. That is a split ban on the AXZ side, and it's a bit worrying to see the Gwen taken away when that really could have been Jet's Yone, could have been a bunch of other things, could have been the Silas. No one else, no matter how anyone feels about any mids, no one else has carried their team as much as Jet. Sits atop the MVPs for this split. There's the signature Yone hover, and that might be a problem for Megamin. The Lissandra isn't there, the Azir isn't there. Keeping range from one of our brothers too might be a little difficult.
It's going to be the Silas instead, though. And equally, I feel like Hyphy pick for Jets. Load of great ultimates that you can steal away. Like the Gnar is absolutely good if you're diving in, but the Keeper's Verdict is also massive if you need to disengage these fights. Has running it back on the Ornn, so we're seeing a fairly low damage composition actually come out from Sengoku. They're really going to be relying on Jet to be a big carry for.
Talia here is Exodia for AXZ. They will have the beginning, middle, and end. There's a few ways they can do this. The Vex is acceptable as a front line, in and out. It can dive forwards with the Nautilus. It's completely fine. Anything to mitigate the way forwards. Orianna will be locked in. That's not the most advantageous lane for Megamin. But later on, AXZ have this big team fighting composition.
Yes.
Big tools, and you could see their Sengoku right at the end felt the need to lock the Ornn to get a big team fighting tool of their own. Otherwise, it would have been lots of little pieces around a Wukong ultimate that wouldn't really work.
It very much feels like AXZ's composition, all of the champions play into the same style. I don't feel like there's many mismatches, and Sengoku, they're a little bit more sporadic, a little bit more unfocused, like you alluded to.
I think there are more options in the Sengoku composition to take advantage of an early lead and hold it. Whether the AXZ comp can slumber forwards in the late game and sort of lurch forwards like some massive giant from the shadows into that advantage is a big question this game. If AXZ can just not fall behind, that is a great composition. And it might sound weird to you, viewer, that it's like, yes, AXZ has definitively done great in this draft. The hands check is always present, but really AXZ have earned the respect here in the
50% of the game has been won. You've just got to go and win the other 50% now.
Get your keyboards ready.
But I think when you are a team that has been a little bit lower down in the standings, it's important that you are setting yourself up with the right tools and that you try and eliminate as many issues as you can. And this composition is very, very easy to execute. It's got very, very simple win conditions. Hit a shockwave onto 3 people in a late game team fight, you're pogging. Jinx getting a reset in a late game team fight without being pressured, you're podding. And for Sengoku, this is a composition for them, which I feel like indexes a bit more into the fact that they are better players. Like I can imagine that if Jet is able to get priority in the mid lane and start moving around, he can cause some problems very, very quickly.
Yeah, sort of to illustrate that, if we flipped which teams had which draft, I'd be rolling on the floor, and Middlecott would be just sort of checking his pulse.
Yep.
Yeah, anything like that, it would be incredible. However, the team that indexes for the AD carry and late game team fighting with big long cooldown ultimates have done so. And the team that hand checks has picked Ione mid in a bit of a bizarre setup that left them completely open to Attilia, and were lucky their opponents didn't play it.
Yep. But the drafts have been locked in, and we are on to the Rift for Sengoku versus AXZ. Well, literally a David versus Goliath matchup for our third game of day 14. But we all know how that ended up going. I wonder if AXZ can cause an upset.
Maybe they will be the little Gnar who could here. AXZ, that mountain to climb, that 6th place to worry about. Sengoku will scan out this bottom river. I don't know if that's a read from Scrims or something, but that is experience going over to NT and Vital. A little bit of a position in this bottom river. The 5 full stack will not be maintained. They won't get the extra ward, but some shenanigans middle cut. This leads to a bit of inside information. I wonder who has been practicing against who.
It's always interesting to see those little reads come out from Scrims. I think one of the big things for us from like sort of international events is obviously a lot of the Japanese teams end up scrimming like the Vietnamese teams, and you can start to see sort of smaller bubble metas emerge from that. Both junglers going to be starting solo on their respective red buffs. As Jetta going in for an aggressive trade onto Megaman already.
Get that at level 1. That's incredible. So we're at the start of the game, guys. It's nice and early on. Megaman is elected to start without a 5th of their health bar, just by positioning slightly aggressively in lane. And those of you at home who are like maybe queuing up for solo queue right now, you got this on a second monitor, maybe you decided that was enough solo queue for the morning. Well, no, you know, potions are really good, losses are really stressful, and Megaman's trying.
Oh my word. And the thing is, like, Megaman has been a mid laner who has kind of been a little bit hot and cold, a little bit up and down. We've seen some strong carry performances out of them. We've seen them be a bit more of an enabler. We've also seen them fall down to some pretty significant disadvantages. And the thing about Jet is that he doesn't care who you are in the LJL. He will do this against absolutely anybody.
All right, that's a bit more equal now. Megaman took that trade a little bit better. Has chugged all the potions and a cookie. So I really hope can stay alive here. This is the problem with Orianna Sylas. It's not the best matchup for Sylas. It's pretty even, but Sylas against Control Mages generally just finds these windows and has opportunity to just attack his opponents when they really want to be focusing on something else. And we saw that exploited to its maxim here. Sengoku, they're aware of what they want to do. Swamp and Wants will meet here.
Yeah, and the Poppy may have gone a little bit too far forward, but gets out of that situation before any danger can come through. And once they're actually going to be moving into this river, stunned against the wall with a heroic charge and the phase rush and the steadfast presence enough to prevent the Wukong going any further forward. As Azuka and Sanctuary finding a fair bit of damage onto NT in this bot lane, as Swans is going to be fighting up with Swamp, forcing flashes actually in the river out from Ozuka as Vital runs away.
All right, a little bit of backwards and forwards. That looks a bit dicey there for a second with Sengoku on full retreat in this bot lane. Just looked a little bit open, but the dredge line not available. Ozuka just had to wait a second more to try his luck there. I like to see the early trading here from AXZ. Swamp was not afraid to stop once crossing the river there to trade backwards and make any potential gank onto bot lane come later. You'd have to finish that camp. We see once his health going up steadily and Swamp pathing away. And with that, that's a little bit of a pinch point nullified for the bottom lane. And I really want to see AXZ make the most of this. Just continue forward stably. Continue making the Ezreal's best time in the game not that valuable.
Yeah, so I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit on that, Temporal, because Ezreal was this champion which was prioritized so heavily for the last few patches, but has really fallen away. On 12-13, it feels like specifically. Is there any specific reason why we're not seeing as much as a Prodigal Explorer?
So there's a bit of fatigue with Ezreal. He's just been played a lot, and now other things coming through on the patch. People are returning a bit more to Xayah, things like that that have been absent from Pro for a little while. There is also a concept I like to discuss called the Ezreal Zone, and it's the max range of Mystic Shot minus 50-ish. It's about half a team of you out there. In that range, if Ezreal can sit in a lane, normally mid, in the mid game, happily poke someone, and then rotate to his objective, he'll do loads of damage. As we see Jet try his luck, will not get the 50-50 on the chickens. If Ezreal can sit in that range once, going for the 1-2 now, Swamp under a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and we've already seen a similar trade like that in the bot side river, where Swamp gets the stun into the wall, you land the charge with the hit the hammer, and then you just run away with phase rush and the stead fast presence. NT and Vital still got priority in this bot lane, but Sanctuary has been able to farm up relatively for free as Ozika is going to find a hook onto the Karma, but can't continue the trade any further.
A little bit of damage over onto Sanctuary and Ozika, not unexpected at this stage. The Ezreal Zone, about 50 less than the max range on Mystic Shot, and it just allows Ezreal to be present in that mid lane. The problem is against Jinx later on, she sits well outside of that zone. What does the Ezreal do when he's not in a huge team fight? Because this AD carry relies on spells and attacks. And if he's not able to reliably use those, unless he's in an all-in, you might as well be playing the Jinx. You might as well play something that plays faster than Ezreal. He does DPS. He does not do damage quickly. And without that, the pick is relatively useless compared to most AD carries that just do things faster.
Yeah, does offer you a relative amount of safety on terms of the side lane. So if we see NT sort of utilize that, leaving the AD carry by their own and moving around the rest of the map and accruing some advantages, maybe that's a strategy that could work out for Sengoku. Swamp once again aiming for that Raptor camp, but isn't able to find it as Jet steals away the Death Charge. And once a few members of AXZ leave this mid lane, could look for an aggressive play.
We'll buy that time later on. Doesn't need to use it straight away. And everyone will fade away back into the jungle. If we look at the map right now, you'll see Paz sitting in base. He's going to use that teleport back up to the top lane. So that is no teleport to a tower defensively in the bottom lane if Sengoku were to be pressed upon once again by the returning members of AXZ. Ooh, nearly cancels the reset from Yellow Yoshi. With once coming up to level 6, I think the dragon is on both of our junglers' minds.
Swamp hanging around there as to it is Vital and NC that do have the bot lane priority. Jet's getting first roam as well, so Bobby needs to get out of here relatively soon, otherwise they could see themselves falling down for first blood. It has been a bit of a tepid early game tempo. Do you feel like there's a team that is upset about this?
Probably Sengoku, really. Axis are really happy with Tepid right now. Tepid says your Jinx is going to be hydrated in 15 minutes. Whereas, you know, Tepid does not light the fires under the burning forges of Sengoku.
A good hook there from Ozika onto NT, but Vital with that level 6 throws out like True Shot Barrage, but doesn't quite find the Nautilus. Small CS lead being accrued for that Ezreal, but remember what you said earlier, we need to be really watching out for him once we get a little bit later into the game, seeing how he matches up against this Jinx.
Yeah, the surprise of the person having an extra flash, just having a little bit of CS lead, just being able to do a little more in lane. Not the end of the world. It's what they can do with it later. Once his Ezreal has his mana immune, maybe his Essence Reaver, looking at the items in his inventory. And from there, what he can do with that poke, with that agency, if he's not able to find much, then this small advantage will be completely forgotten.
Yeah, it's something that we have seen from DFM today, as Sengoku are doing now, with Paz trading up against Yellow Yoshi in the top lane. Might actually look for an all-in here. Does kill the Forge God, and once now roaming over with that Herald, the flash forced over the wall. Something we have seen, Temporal, is teams going a lot more towards this Herald in the early stages, kind of ignoring the Drake to a certain extent and not really focusing the objective.
Yeah, I think the risk factor has sort of come up where if you go for that first dragon and the Herald is spawning, you didn't get it on the fastest possible spawn when there is no trade with the Rift Herald, then most people are just very keen to leave it alone and let your opponent go in for that disadvantageous trade that lets you get the Herald earlier on without committing much. And the extra gold from that just doesn't trade back over to your opponent. They get the 25 for killing Shelly, and you get 3 plates.
There's a plate actually secured for Paz in this top lane, who on the Ornn has actually been doing absolutely fine versus an R. You typically expect tanks going up against the mini Gnar to suffer a fair bit, but Paz sort of showing his quality on this this weak side pick and doing absolutely fine.
Yeah, even's great for Ornn here. You know, he's going to have that big team fight tool. He's not starved of gold, as you sometimes expect Ornn to be in this lane. As you rightly say, if the Gnar holds an advantageous wave state, it gets really difficult really quickly. Poke backwards and forwards here. Someone's trying to find an all-in.
Yeah, and Once was looking for it onto Megamin, who is going to expend that summoner over the wall. Both solo laners from AXZ now without their flash, and if Once is able to make some aggressive moves around the map, could look to punish those. As so much stancing has occurred between these two junglers. Swamp walking forward into that bot lane, but consistently it's Sengoku that have had the position. They've had sort of the first rotate, but actually AXZ just sort of forcing themselves into the river a little bit, not going to result in anything further. Again, it's so tepid, it's so cagey from both of these teams.
It really is. Like, both junglers clearly have this, like, 5th camp on the map, and it's just staring at each other's faces. AXZ will take a little damage here. Sengoku, over the last few minutes, they've tried to find some chip damage. They've tried to find a reliable way to Dragon, but Swamp will respond.
Oh, flash engaged from Ozaka immediately onto NT, who's going to be forced to flash away, take it down for first blood. Keeper's verdict pushes away that Wukong, and AXZ get the play.
All right, they found the numbers advantage. Will they transfer it to Dragon? Will Swamp try and do something else, or will it just be the reset for economy? AXZ feel the need to not rush here. Jet will steal away the shockwave. I don't think it's going to be a dive. I don't think it's going to be exciting. AXZ are happy with just a little bit of money and going back and doing it again.
And we've seen, like, so many times First Blood coming through onto 80 carries in this matchup. And I mean, looking at this just from a perspective, Vital getting that early damage down was looked good, but then Ozaka is so proactive.
He maybe played his hand a little bit too much, as soon as that true shot barrage was visible, both teams started on my way pinging the Ezreal. I think both teams set in their mind, it's like, hey, this is a fight. They're telegraphing they're here. Let's take advantage. AXZ managed to do that. They've got the Kraken Slayer for Jinx at 11 minutes. It's looking great right now, middle cut.
Yeah, trying to accelerate her ahead of this Ezreal as soon as possible. There is going to be a point, you imagine, where Vital is sat on the Mirror Mana and on this Essence Reaver as well, where the Ezreal is actually pretty strong in terms of power, but as soon as the Jinx reached his 2 items, that really quickly goes away. I like what we saw from AXZ there, just sort of recognizing that there was the opportunity for Sengoku to make a play in that mid lane, but not recognizing that the bot lane is also a possibility. The hook landing onto one of them and the chompers are enough to prevent him from going forward. Sengoku, they keep forcing plays, but finding nothing.
They get most of Sanctuary's health bar, but it's not the kill they were looking for in a lane without summoners. They'll spawn the Herald. This is going to try and get the Ezreal going. I'm a bit worried about Sanctuary losing his turret. I'm
a bit worried about Yellow Yoshi as he's in the enemy jungle with no escape. First kill of the game for Sengoku.
A little bit of a cross map gone wrong for AXZ's top laner. They will hold the turret in the bottom lane. If Sanctuary lost that tower there is potential for a deep freeze that the Jinx would enjoy. Sengoku, they want to extract gold. They are going to go for the tower here. This is a huge risk, middle cut.
Oh, Hex Flash over the wall from Ozaka. Ultimate is available for the Nautilus. The hook going just wide. These Mystic shots in the back of his head. Very close for the Nautilus. But with AXZ's bot lane being forced back and Megamin moving into this mid lane, first tower and first Drake of the game going to go in favor of Sengoku.
I really would prefer Sengoku to just slowly let the minion wave die here. They've got to get as much money out as possible. That's what's going to give the Jinx the way back into this game, or AXZ's composition strength. I do like starting to roll the dragons, though. There will be a stage at which Sengoku needs to bring AXZ out before they are ready if they're going to win with this faster composition.
Although they are accelerating this, Ezreal, which is what they needed to do Temporal, and we're starting to see items completed for other members of Sengoku as well. Paz has been sat on that Frostfire Gauntlet for a little while, once just ticking over to the Divine Sunderer.
So some item completions. Sengoku will not be unhappy with at all. Vital, going for the blind spot. Doesn't deal that much damage just yet. Is about to finish their Mirror Mana, though. And with Unleashed teleports coming out across the map, we'll see Paz move to this bottom lane. Yellow Yoshi following suit. I do like this assignment plus item combination from Sanctuary. He's gone for a very late cull. That's a little bit of extra money in his pocket. when he accepts that late game scaling. However, it does consign him to a side lane here. It consigns AXZ to not wishing to fight. That may give Sengoku a way in, a way to attack these assignments as the Herald comes up in topside.
Yeah, and Sengoku have already built themselves a decent lead throughout these early stages, 2000. But I think if AXZ are able to achieve that game state like you're referring to, where fighting doesn't happen, they're going to be absolutely fine. Ozika Sanctu now pushing in the topside. Swamp is here as well, but I don't think Jet even cares. Probably could go for a 1v3.
Knowing Jet, he'd try. Talking about Herald and that lack of fighting, AXZ have moved in here first. They want to dissuade Sengoku from even bothering by keeping someone in mid just a little bit longer. Now, NT has pulled the trigger and he has got out of that lane.
Oscar going a little bit wide with the hook as once gets the engage onto 2. The steadfast presence not enough to prevent the engage as the keeper's verdict is going to be fired out, but it's already AXZ being destroyed in the fight. It's already Sengoku picking up the kills. That's 3 in their favor without a response coming through. And AXZ forced to back away. They wanted to slow down the game. Sengoku put their foot on the accelerator.
They managed to find their way in. That was a bit of a Dignitas moment. Even with Ozika going down, it felt like AXZ were winning till Sengoku found Sanctu, burned some cooldowns, and the Jinx vanishes before our eyes. Let me show you a magic trick, middle cut. Up our sleeve, we have one Sengoku early rotation. That Karma confidently moving out of lane makes up the numbers here. Once pulls the trigger, the super charge depth charge from Jet, dealing all that extra damage, offers. Look at Sanctu, still untouched. He's got Yellow Yoshi behind him now. But 1 Ornn ultimate plus 1 Divey Silas makes the Jinx disappear. And with it, AXZ's hopes of winning that fight.
Yeah, maybe their hopes of winning this game, because 4,500 gold lead now for Sengoku. And that Herald in Once's pocket. These side lane towers have already been taken down. A lone one standing in the mid lane for AXZ, and once that falls, which it's going to do very, very shortly, Sengoku are going to be free to play a little bit more aggressive in AXZ's jungle.
That has been a theme so far, that meeting in the river, and AXZ's Swamp holding his ground against Once. Won't be able to do that now with the vision control that Sengoku will have the opportunity to place with those missing outer towers.
Minute and a half until the Infernal Drake, as we're seeing Vital just feels absolutely free to go forward.
He's feeling it. He's enjoying himself.
Well, I mean, he's allowed to. He's on that 2-item spike that we referred to on this Ezreal, where he does look incredibly powerful as multiple members of AXZ roaming towards this mid lane. I think the priority in that mid lane is going to be very important for the next couple of minutes, as Paz and Jet getting priority on the side lanes, shoving those in, forcing AXZ to respond to them.
AXZ being pulled around the map right now. We'll see the solo laners breathe back out to the outside, but priority is the name of the game, middle cut. Sengoku have got it in all 3 lanes. We'll see the Herald dropped. That's going to be a slow burner. It'll come in on the next wave. They're waiting to try and get another dragon.
Yeah, and Jet is looking for a solo kill onto Mega Man. Trade of ultimates. Flash is traded as well, as Paz going for a dive under the tier 2 tower. Maybe a bridge too far for Sengoku, but it doesn't look like it, as Ozika is already dead. Yellow Yoshi with an art back, but there's no damage to follow up on it. He's forced to flash away, as now finally Sanctu has the space to free hit, but doesn't have the items to break any health bars.
You know how you can bring that Ezreal zone forwards, middle cut? You can just make your top laner dive through, relying on the Herald to take out that tower behind Sengoku, and with it, our Samurai charge forwards with the dragon coming up in 20 seconds. They've raised towers, and now they've pushed AXZ all the way back into their own base.
And what did we say in the pre-game? It's not good enough for Sengoku to win here. They have to win decisively. It was a tepid early stage, but we've hit that 15-minute mark, and they are really turning the screws now.
Jet manages to push Mega Man out. That's sort of resolved in the bot lane now. Paz goes deep behind 2 towers. The Herald fixes and allows Sengoku to move forwards as a unit now. Paz's health bar still really high. The Gnar is just vanity at this stage. They get the 6th man in. The Herald destroys a bunch of that tower. Does damage to Ozika, who falls. And with it, the dragon will be going the way of Sengoku game.
And now AXZ are in a really, really tough spot, because it's not like they don't scale as a squad. Like, Orianna and Jinx are infamous for their ability to operate in the later stages of the game, but Sengoku don't seem like they want to give them that opportunity. They don't want to give them that time to get to the point where the carries are online.
We're hitting the stage now. We're just going coast to coast to coast and holding tempo forever. Isn't truly effective for Sengoku. The Baron coming up that they are maybe not best positioned to take with just the Ezreal and the Silas dishing out massive damage to the objective. The Wukong will do some, but it is not stuff like a Karthus. It is not stuff that absolutely shreds the objective. And with that in mind, Sengoku are actually going to have to play the vision game they've set themselves up for without the towers to gain that next advantage.
As AXZ are going to be trying to clear some of that out in their top side jungle. Player I want to give a shout out to that I feel like we don't really talk about as much is Paz. Already got 2 items completed on the Ornn with that Frozen Heart. The Spectral Cow going to be turning into something pretty tanky very, very soon. As, yeah, you're not particularly tanky right now if you are a member of AXZ. Ozika is already on 20% HP, and that TP coming through from Yellow Yoshi is going to result in 50% of the Nars health bar being taken away. Sengoku, with the health bar advantage, may look a little bit more eagerly at that Baron.
They can definitely move into this top quadrant and clean it completely of vision. That was just a little bit of damage from Vital and NT onto Yellow Yoshi's Gnar. That is not a lot of committal. They're really looking scary right now. NT is going to clear his wards and probably recall to go and get another round. AXZ, they've gotten back out here, but Sengoku have gone back to farm other lanes. So there will not be an extension of that tempo. Instead, they want to do it again. Middle cut priority, vision, and priority once again. They've done their vision. You'll see some blue marks still left in that top quadrant. Just the Tribush being the most important one right now. And in the mid lane to check entrances and exits. They now would need to recall, restock those wards as we see 4 in NT's inventory. And with that, go back out onto the map, get the priority, and do it again.
And for AXZ, this is really feeling like such a horrible game because you've only died 5 times. Like, it doesn't feel like you should be as far behind as you are. It's not a bloodbath, but what Sengoku have really excelled at this split is being able to extend map advantages by just being there, by just being in a place, and AXZ going, wait, we actually can't contest them on this, and if we do try and contest them on this, they're going to get a couple kills, and we end up losing even more.
Making your opponent have no good options, no good decisions is the mark of great macro. This was defined the early Korean stage of League, where it was just everything has to have a ward. Our support will buy 300 wards. You can't make a good decision because we have set it perfectly. It's not always perfect anymore, middle cut, but making your opponent have a rough choice, like whether to come forwards on this Baron.
Yeah, as there's no rough choice for Paz throwing up the Call of the Forge God. That is an easy ultimate to use. And Ozika, once again, being the frontline, being caught out. Shockwave only onto 1, though, as the stolen Gnar slams the Poppy into the wall. And Sanchu now has no support, has no one to back him up, and no hope of winning this game. Another clean fight from Sengoku as they pick up 4, and Megabin is forced to run for the hills.
AXZ had to fight that. They had to stop that Baron. Unfortunately, they throw themselves in headfirst, and Sengoku take full advantage.
You force your opponent into making no good decision, and every decision they make is going to result in disaster. A clean ace for Sengoku, a Baron as well, and look at this as well. They're 3-manning the Baron so that Paz and Jet can push these waves up, deny some jungle resources, and get the maximum value from this play.
If I'm Sengoku here, I'm looking at that choke point. We're looking at AXZ coming forwards. They show on the ward, we see Ozika, and with it, Paz pulls the trigger. This Nautilus is so squishy, and if you break him, Jet can get through Swamp into the backline after just a few seconds. Stolen Gnar also breaks the front. Sangchu was living for so long, the damage isn't quite there for the Jinx yet, and once burns everything. The front line is gone. AXZ completely broken. They tried to delay once into the back line, but even then, not enough.
And one of the things that we praised about this AXZ composition was that it was incredibly standard. It was incredibly easy to execute, and Sengoku just aren't allowing them the time to set up. We aren't getting Swamp standing in front of everyone with that steadfast presence being basically unkillable. We're having Ozika getting a little bit caught out and Sangchu being sort of left alone. AXZ really aren't working as a 5-person unit, and Sengoku are taking full advantage of that.
They may not be able to, as we'll see in the replay. Sengoku just take away a bit of extra resources. They do force the blue buff to be smited and the flash away from Jet. So AXZ biting back, not giving up just yet. A little bit of interfacing at the front here. These Baron creeps do take a lot of time to kill. Ozika takes some damage, and Jet's trying to find a flank on the side.
Well, I think he's finding a flank on the side. As he's found Yelioshi, he's going to dive forward, knock him into the wall. There's so much damage on this Silas at this point of the game. It really, really is irresistible. Sengoku get the pick and are going to push in mid.
All right, little advantages in little places. They're also going to get that tier 2 in the bottom side while this is going on. They're making sure AXZ can't respond to everything. You cannot send 4 people to respond to 5. Once again, Sengoku grind out further advantage. We're up over 11,000 gold, middle cut. I can't see this lasting too much longer.
Yeah, we finally got Sanctuary on 2 items, but the Ezreal is nearly on for the flash forward for the engage from Ozaka, but he's not quite able to find it as Swamp in the front line gets knocked up, and Paz stunned against the wall actually, but that one is incredibly tanky. An excellent true shot barrage from Vital as he goes forward, finds a kill. AXZ get their second of the game, and it may just be their last as they're forced to retreat to the fountain.
All right, this inhibitor tower will fall in mid in the bottom lane. 2 inhibitors, no doubt, soon to follow. Ozaka will pick up that locket, so that is going to make Jet's job at diving forwards that little bit harder. Maybe provide that clutch turnaround if Sengoku go a little too far. We saw Paz falling there with that, but that's really all we've got at this stage, middle cut. There is not a lot to go on.
I love that from Vital. Could have easily arcane shifted over the wall to get away safely, but no, stands up in the face of AXZ and takes the Hex Gate away. Jet not quite going to be able to steal out this red buff as the Super Mega Death Rocket for an attempted Drake steal. Ooh, that was bloody close, Temporal.
90 on the dot. AXZ trying to take everything they can, every little piece from this game. This is a huge glow up for the team. We are certain almost are locked into 7th. Against Sengoku, they will not give up. We're almost at the stage when we'll cut. The reason I'm hyping what looks like the dead horse on the ground is we're getting to the stage where that Jinx has got 2, nearly 3 items. The Oriana, they are the wrong items, but I will contain myself, is almost on 3 items. The Gnar, for not having the greatest performance, has his Triforce, and he almost has his Black Cleaver, his 2nd item, which supports Jinx's damage. If there is to be a time for AXZ, they have almost achieved their condition of getting to the late game. Was it enough, middle cut? Is 10,000 too much? We will quickly find out as AXZ are running forwards.
Yeah, looking for an engage, only finding it onto the Ornn though, and yeah, I think 10,000 might be a little bit too much, Temporal. Ozaka already taken out the fight as in comes the response TP from Yelioshi to try and defend this top lane tower, but it's not going to happen yet. Might be in a 1v3 relatively soon as that inhib being defended stalwartly by AXZ, but once again, Sengoku giving their opponent no good decision to make. Either you defend this top lane tower and lose your mid lane inhib, or you defend your mid lane inhib and use your top lane tower, or the likely scenario, you end up in the long run losing everything.
There will be trades backwards and forwards. Jet is pulling a funny face right now as AXZ cannot respond meaningfully across all lanes. Sengoku can spread thin, and it takes more of AXZ to beat less of Sengoku.
And you can just see that. Like, Jet is going to be hitting onto Nexus towers while the fight is emerging in the top side, and doesn't really care. The shockwave going wide. Yelioshi not quite able to find the scoop back. 2 ultimates whiffing as Sengoku have just decided they're going to end this game. Once a Jet now hitting onto the Nexus towers. Nexus has been opened up, and that means that the rest of the squad are just going to run through and try and win this. Ozaka getting knocked back by Jez. A huge cyclone from once finds everybody in the back line. Isolation onto Yelioshi as he's going to be taken out as here comes the call of the Forge God. It is a formality at this point. Sengoku bounce back from earlier defeats and take out AXZ.
Sengoku just putting their signature on the piece of paper at this stage. They take the game quickly and cleanly. It was aim for them in the pregame. It's good to see they didn't let off the brakes where they didn't have to.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a little bit tepid for the first 10 minutes, but you really felt like they were a hell of a lot more confident coming into the mid stages. And as soon as they had that sort of confidence to play, AXZ never really had a chance.
There were chances. I just think paired with the small sort of I don't want to say miscommunications because that's not right. Uncoordination. That Baron fight could have been executed. AXZ should not only had to go forwards there, It looks a little bit rough. We're going to kick it to a quick break. We will be back in just a minute with our fourth and final game of the day. Don't go anywhere.
Well, that's about exactly what we expected it to be in game number 3 of the day.
Yeah.
Not
Calling
really
it
any
as it
kinder way to
is.
put it.
Calling it as it is. It
Yeah.
was a bit
Yeah.
one-sided.
That's fine. I think critically, the most damning thing you can say about Sengaku in that game was they haven't really evolved in terms of upping the pace in the early game, like we've sort of been pressing on them to in the pregame there, Temporal.
I think they did with the picks they had. Like the Ezreal is not like a
Yeah.
it doesn't really exist anything like old Cogmore now, where level 1 is like incredible to level 4 is incredible, then falls off a cliff till 11. Like that was like Ezreal's spike. You're right that maybe there was a bit more backwards and forwards than we would expect from a top team, but I think AXZ really tried their best here, and that's really more on them.
Yeah. I think this was kind of Axis standing up a bit more than we necessarily expected. Whilst in the fights their draft didn't look good, it was still good at neutralizing in terms of the lanes. Right, Ezreal Karma is never going to kill a Jinx Nautilus, and then the Gnar and the Orianna are absolutely fine at going. Even the Poppy can ultra neutralize as well. So I think maybe to a certain extent, this was Sengoku's ability to play the early game being hampered a little bit by the draft. And as soon as they got those gold leads, we saw how explosive they did end up being.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm starting to come around. I was a little bit dismayed at first when Vital was basically handed the starting spot over Honey.
Yeah.
I was a little bit perturbed because Honey's been so good, but man, oh man, Vital makes some of these picks like the Ezreal Sing in these fights. Where would you guys place him right now in terms of the cream of the crop 80 carries here in the LJL?
You first, Milka.
Oh, he's definitely top 10. I think it's incredibly difficult in a league that not only has so many strong AD carries, but so many AD carries that play in different ways and are in different circumstances. Like, if we're going purely off numbers, Utapon is looking the best right now, but obviously he's got DFM around him, which makes him look great. Second place in terms of numbers is Hybrid, who of CGA. For Vital, I feel like he's in this sort of middle ground where he's got a strong team around him, but he can also pull out like some pretty consistent carry performances. I want to see a little bit more bite from him sometimes. I want to see something a little bit more. I don't know. There's just something about him where he's not quite made enough of an impression on me to go like, yes, he is specifically better than Honey in these scenarios. I've not yet got to the point where I'm thinking that if Sengoku had Honey in for all these games, that they would have done any worse. Vital has been excellent, but that was kind of the benchmark. So I don't know.
It was the
I like
level
that.
2 overcome. Hybrid is the best AD carry in the LJL. Just because, you know, when you play with weights on your ankles, you got to recognize you got to try a bit harder. Utapon has looked excellent this season and is a strong 1.5 or second place pick because he is producing the results that a team like CJ cannot produce. And that's a great thing. You know, this guy's 8 years, I believe, or more into his competitive career. He's been around since the dawn of time. He still makes it look so good. For me, there is the question of third, fourth, fifth for Vital because he exists in the same place as AD carries like Marble, who are having success. They look really flashy in moment to moment sometimes, and they make like extra plays. In the LGL, that's you're right, hitting on baselines and benchmarks. That's kind of what we expect. We expect greatness here from our AD carries, and he hasn't really excelled that. I'm not even going to rank Honey because I don't know where Honey has gone. I miss him so. But I just don't know what's going on there.
Sengoku really hoarding all of the talent. I mean, they have Yatoru Miyoshi in the Academy AD carry position as well, right? So they have 3 AD carries that should be starting in the LJL under their control. So definitely taking the knees out from under some of the competition by handicapping what they can do with those AD carry positions. Going back to what you said here, Temporal, about excellence as a benchmark, you also made a point during the game. Literally, I thought this, and then not a second later you said it, and it made me feel very validated because you're quite smart, which is, in terms of excellence, Korean League of Legends was the benchmark for a long time, especially in the early days, the way they played the game with this focus on control, forcing your opponents into no correct decisions. And it feels like in every region, there's a team that plays to that level within the region, and it's always been the scuttlebutt against North America, right? That you have these teams that can play great control style in the region, but then they don't have the guns or the confidence to actually play against better teams from out of the region. And Sengoku is really our control team here. They are playing scaling, they're playing, you know, blue-white decks. What is the outlook long term and how much they'll be able to challenge a team like DFM or Hooks come playoffs once again if they continue to rely on this choke out sort of style of League of Legends?
I like that comparison because traditionally that was DFM of, let's take spring last year to MSI. They don't translate internationally. They do not execute on the perfection they bring to their region. And it's not like there's a difference. The League of Legends' Summoner's Rift is the same shape on one tournament patch to another. Believe me, it does not change. Ever.
Well, except when they added alcoves. That changed.
Forget the alcoves.
That changed nothing.
There is no change, but DFM DFM on an international stage looks shaky.
Mm.
Not because they look bad, but because we expect such great things from them here, and we see it against good teams. They go up against other good teams, and they just smash them. And it's not a great time. DFM doesn't work out. Sengoku might be the change there. They might, with their inexperience at international, just keep it all on the same road. Don't let the nerves get into your head. It's just another game. There will be 5 opponents. There will be 4 of your teammates, and you will have to wait for minions to spawn. And with that said,
Well,
I would like Sengoku to translate this further.
Yeah.
And, you know, there isn't that perfect control anymore. It doesn't exist anymore. It was removed for a good reason because it was stale. However, this modern style, I would like to see move forwards. It's what we see in the best teams of other regions, and I have seen it from Sengoku this split.
I think the thing for me is that to play a control style of League of Legends, you need to have the hands that actually allow you to do that. And that means that when you are going for the setup on plays, you're not just going to get jumped on and completely removed. A team that actually was really, really good for this when they were at the peak of their performance was actually Unicorns of Love in Europe. Is that they played a very, very aggressive style. And a load of people called it Fiesta, a load of people called it Flippy, but they would just attack people when they were trying to set up plays, when they were trying to set up vision. And I think that's where DFM kind of have the edge over Sengoku, is they're a lot more willing to pull the trigger when you are sort of in the pre-team fight phase, I guess. And Sengoku are much more concerned about having all their ducks in a row before they can actually make the play.
I like that assessment a lot. DFM may be a bit more explosive in the LJL than Sengoku right now. Just call him Harpasang, unicorns of detonation. Definitely a great marker there for DFM. But that will do it on our breakdown here for game number 3. We have one more game coming up for you after a short break here. It will be RJ versus V3 to put us out on a bang? Question mark?
So sorry, V3. So sorry, my friend.
We'll return shortly to break that one down for you. Don't go anywhere.